Kyle, you're into not the off season, but the second season, which you're hoping to attack, and I think really sets up winning in the regular season. Uh, the key goals for you at this period of the year is what?
Figure out a way to put a productive and good football team back on the field. We've had a nice run with minimal turnover on our roster. When you even think back to that 2019 that won the Grey Cup, and we've been to four, won a couple of them, and trying to figure out how do we get the best group back and keep sustaining this winning. Understanding that there's some turnover, and we are a veteran team, and I use the term veteran contracts as well as being a veteran team, and the veteran contracts tend to catch up with you in a salary cap. So trying to figure out a way to make everything work and keeping a core group together so that we can be competitive on the field again next year.
There's a balance to that in terms of wanting good players to come back, but then also determining what point do you want them to come back, whether it's age and salary. As you go through thinking of keeping a core together, but also making sure that you're improving it and not holding on to past success, how do you balance those things?
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, you have the discussions with the group, and a lot of it, Donovan, is we look in the building and who in the building that maybe spent on the practice roster or was a backup, or that we think deserves a bigger role next year. So that's a big part of the prior year's practice roster and setting yourself up for next year. So looking at the depth chart, and it moving on from players is very difficult. But if you're heading into next year with some players on your roster that have been in the building, that knows the system, that have flashed, that they deserve a bigger opportunity. That is a lot of the discussion as well. That these young guys are ready, and maybe we don't want to move on from the player in front of them, but because of financial restraints, potentially age, it does make it a little easier when in the building we've got somebody that we think can step up and replace them.
The poster boy for that would be Brady Oliveira. It's not often you go from homegrown award winning rushing leader to homegrown award winning rushing leader. You can see a young player, whether they get snaps in the preseason or at the end of games or practice, and project what they might be. But even your biggest projections, has Brady surpassed that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, when we drafted Brady, and we liked him coming out, and hometown guy, and was a solid player at North Dakota. Um, uh, yeah, I don't know that any of us thought the trajectory that he's had would be this quick. And it's he's turned into a real pro. His work ethic, his study, and being around Andrew and seeing that, and how hard Andrew worked and prepared, and how good a pass blocker, all those little things that maybe everybody sees him get the ball and run hard, but all the other stuff that goes into it, that I you know, that's why Brady's had so much success, and we're proud of him, and we're glad we drafted him. And now he's deservingly looking for, him and his agent are rightfully so looking for a raise. So we're trying to sort through that.
When you look at team building, because you've been around it for quite a bit, um, it- have you noticed any differences or trends in terms of the building of a roster and the way the game's going?
You know what? I guess we've been fortunate here with Mike and I being in this building now for a decade. We've started. It started when we were not a very good football team when we took over, and the turnover of character. Focusing on high quality players, and from a scouting department, we know the type of guys that Mike wants, the type of guys that are going to fit in the locker room. And in our building, it's come training camp, it's as much about the quality of individual as the talent on the field, when we start making our team. So, and we've got such a strong group that it's the young guys come in and they see the way it's supposed to be done. So we've built this up to where the culture and the quality of individual in the building is where we want it, and we won't go back. It's a hard enough job, hard enough winning with that you want good people to do it with. It's hard enough that you don't want to make it more difficult with bad characters.
We talk in football all the time about players, coaches, and in the league we have a lot of them. We're blessed to have former players staying close to the game and contributing via coaching. But I label you as a player's executive, someone who's played the game and can apply some of that experience to what you do, whether it's for you, whether it's for Wade. Is there an intrinsic advantage to being someone who's been on the field? And if so, how does that impact how you do your job?
I would say yes. I think it allows me. I mean, our head coach, Mike, he's at I think the extreme of end of the scale as far as quality of individual will trump talent. Okay, and then you generally have your scouting department, um, talent, 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 and I get it. There's both sides. I find myself in the middle, but I do, from the experience that I've had as a player and a coach, that of course I understand the importance of a locker room chemistry, the importance of quality of individuals, of guys that are going to go out and work hard and stay after practice, and that is, you know, you're not, you're not going to win with just guys that try hard. That's not the way it works. There obviously has to be a talent component to it, but with my experience as a player and a coach, I certainly see the point of view of quality of individual in our building, and err on that side of things versus sometimes just the best football player that may not be the best individual.
When people look at the success of the team under your leadership, it's like, well, they got the quarterback right, they got the pass rusher right. I would say you got the Canadians right, and this quality of Canadian. I talked at Grey Cup week that I don't think it's coincidence that the two coaches were led by Canadian GMs who have experience at the U Sports level. I'm somewhat biased in saying that, but you have certainly done well via the Canadian draft. Is there a key in terms of evaluating Canadian talent and being able to project how they would assimilate to the pro game? And what differences have you noticed from the Canadian talent over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think on that point, I think the high end Canadian talent is higher than it's ever been, and I think you're looking at the number of NFL opportunities and the success that these Canadian kids are having down there. Um, I think that's the biggest one, Donovan, is that the really good Canadians are as good as they've ever been, and there's more of them in the college ranks coming out each year. I do. It was a cool experience having competing against Danny in the Grey Cup with both of us being U Sport coaches, and kind of earning our stripes at the U Sport level. It does make us appreciate the Canadian U Sport system and the Canadians in general. I mean, and you see it, we'll have these league meetings, and there's certainly, when the discussions come up, Danny and I tend to always be on the side supporting Canadians and U Sport football, and having our point of view from that way. It's that years that I was coaching at Guelph really, I can't say how important they were to that step to me getting to where I am now. They were critically important, and it's just a respect for the Canadian kids, and understanding how good they are, and understanding how good the coaches are at the U Sport level. And what do we look for? We try to. It's interesting. We discuss about it. It's you do your film study and you look at the players who are productive on the field, and that's generally the easier part of it. It's about the kids who. How do we pull out that they love football? That's the big one. Do they have a passion for it? And that's why it's neat to see the kids play and talk to their coaches, and see them at the combines and talk to them. It's trying to draw that love of the game out of it and the passion that they have. And we often use an evaluation is that's our kind of guy. And by that's a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. And it's the type of player that just plays with a passion, that loves it, that's running around, having fun out there, and smashing people all the time. That's sort of, that's the way we put that. It goes back to the same thing. Generally, you love the game, you're a high quality individual, and it all kind of molds into what we want a Winnipeg Blue Bomber to be from a Canadian standpoint.
Kind of sounds like Mike Miller. He is promoted into a new role. What are you looking forward to seeing him in that capacity?
Yeah, I mean, Mike's a great guy. He's been doing this for a long time. He's got a passion for the game. I think the players are going to play hard for him. It's nice with our head coach being, a best special teams coordinators that the league's ever seen. That Mike will have a nice mentor from Mike, and he'll be able to grow into that role and learn. And as I said, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Mike coach, and I'm excited to see the way the players will play hard for him. I know they will.
And lastly, before I let you go, you talked about the growth of Canadians. I mean, coming up, there were Canadians, but they essentially played the same receivers, the same positions. Your linemen, your interior tackles, safety, wide side corner, a couple of receivers. Now we're seeing, and on your team, some of those ratio breakers. How does that aspect change the way you build your draft boards, you evaluate talent, and you look to fill out a roster?
Yeah, it's interesting. Not too many years ago, you'd evaluate all the DBs at the U Sport level, and there'd be corners, dimes, free safeties, and it would be, well, can this kid play free safety? And that's all we talk about. Is he a free safety? Can you move him? You'd look at pass rushers, and it'd be like, well, can he put on weight and move inside? You'd look at athletic tackles and be like, well, can we move him to guard? Like, and this was not that long ago, and now you're seeing the success at every position. Running, no one ever would draft a Canadian running back or ever get to play. Can he transition to a fullback? Like all the old ways of, all right, how can we have this Canadian kid playing at a U Sport school that there's no position for him in the CFL. So how do we transition him? And I think with the success you're seeing, I mean, Red is a starting dime in our league. He's versatile. He can play halfback. Terrell Ford came up last year and proved that he can play corner. Doesn't matter where. You got all the edge rushers now that are getting an opportunity to play, and some Canadian offensive tackles, and Brady's success at tailback, and Andrew's success at tailback. So it's great for players. It's great for Canadian players that whatever position you're playing, you're going to have an opportunity to come in and compete. And I think the CFL teams are less narrow-minded, I would say, and more open to letting kids play their natural positions and have an opportunity to compete with the Americans.
Well, it means a further and a more in-depth evaluation for you in the offseason, but it also means a greater game. Thank you so much for taking the time and helping to grow the game.
Okay, thanks, Don. Have a great day.